Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back here to today's edition of Advanced Bass Fishing, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel to spend some time with me on the video today. And we're going to be talking about catching big bass today. The main thing about catching big bass is there's a lot of different things that have to line up in order for you to consistently catch them. Now, everybody or anybody can just once in a while, luck out and catch a big one. But if you want to consistently catch big fish, and when I'm talking about big ones, I'm talking about fish that are over 4 pounds, because 4-pounder is a big one. You got to consistently do the same thing in terms of how you fish and where you fish and techniques that you use and approaches. So I want to go over today in today's video what those techniques are. Just some tips and advice on things that I've used to consistently catch big ones over the years. Definitely think it's going to help you guys out because it's worked pretty good for me here. Also, guys, thank you very much for everybody that's taking time to hit the subscribe button here to Advanced Bass Fishing or become a Patreon or channel member. Really appreciate that. And also, guys, anybody interested in booking an on-the-water lesson with me, you can go to my Facebook page, Randy Blaukat Professional Angler. Just shoot me a private message for details. And then finally, guys, thank you everybody to everybody that's been using my tackle warehouse link I put in the description of every video. That's a great way to support Advanced Bass Fishing. If you need tackle, you can just use my link there, and it really helps the channel out a lot. The channel gets a small percentage of a commission on anything you buy, so big thank you from me and my family if you're doing that there. Okay, one of the things that I'm sort of proud about in my tournament career is there was a period of between about 1989 to 1995 where I won 7 Big Bass Awards, daily Big Bass Awards on the Bassmaster Top 100 and Top 150 circuit. I did a couple times on FLW, but I did it 7 times with Bassmaster, catching the big bass of the day. And in order to do that, it's all about using, the type of techniques that are going to catch big fish. But the thing about it, if you want to consistently catch big ones, you don't want to go too far to the extreme on any direction. In other words, obviously you don't want to use small baits. You're not going to catch many big fish. But also you don't want to use those big honking giant baits, like those big giant swim bait and glide baits. Those are very low percentage lures for catching big fish on. So what I want to talk about today are some of the key lures that produce big ones, and more importantly, where you want to fish at to catch the big fish. So we'll get into that. Okay, now first of all, in order to catch big fish consistently, you've got to be on a lake that's got big fish in it. A population of bass over 4 pounds, a decent population. Some lakes they just don't have a lot of big fish in them. I mean, depending upon where you're at, time of the year. For example, where I fish here in Missouri all the time, Table Rock Lake, there used to be a lot of big fish in the lake, and there's not anymore. So a big fish on Table Rock Lake is 4 or 5 pounder is a big fish now in Table Rock Lake. Whereas if you're in Texas or California, maybe a 10 pounder is a big one. So it's all relative to where you fish, the geographical part of the country, and the lakes that you fish. Most of the truly giant bass that are caught throughout the year in the United States are caught in Florida, Texas, or California. They comprise far more than, it's not even close. There's not even a close, fourth on that. Those are the 3 states that produce all the big fish. And everybody else has got, there's some lakes that have good fish in them, but not consistently like those 3 do. So that helps out. So if you fish in Texas, California, or Florida, you're spoiled as far as the big ones. Try to come up north a little bit and try to catch as many 8 and 10 pounders up here as you do down there. You'll be sorely disappointed, I can assure you. Okay, so what do you need to do to catch big ones? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pounders. So what has to take place in order for it to do it? Now, there's 2 different techniques for this. There's 2 different approaches with it. Number 1 is your lure selection. Number 2 is where you're fishing at. And then also you have time of the year considerations. Most of the big fish that you're going to catch throughout the year, most all of them are going to come during the pre-spawn time of the year or during the early summer post-spawn. Those are the 2 times a year where the big fish are more accessible, because in the pre-spawn period of the year, you've got more big fish up shallow, getting ready to spawn, looking to spawn, staging to spawn. There's just a bigger population of big fish shallow and makes them more catchable. And during the early summer, you've got more big fish that are schooled up deep, like on drop-offs and ledges, and that's another good time to catch big ones. Now, I'm not talking, as you guys know in the channel here, I'm not talking about big fish you catch with forward-facing sonar. That's a completely different world, different population of bass. I'm talking about bass that you're catching with traditional bass fishing techniques, which that's the way most people like to fish. So, yeah, you can catch an 8-pounder on a jig head minnow, but we're not talking about that in today's video. Let's go over some of the baits, some of the key baits on there. First one is a big spinner bait. Big spinner bait is a key big bass lure. And if I look back at the bass in my lifetime that I've caught over 7 pounds, I bet, guys, that probably at least 50–60% of them have came on a big 3/4 to 1 ounce spinner bait with big willow leaf or Colorado blades on them. This is probably the best big bass lure that you can throw to consistently catch quality big fish on it, especially if you're throwing it during that time of the year, during the pre-spawn. A big spinner bait with big blades on it, fished like in the water temperatures when it's in the 50s in the pre-spawn, great way to catch big ones. That you just can't hardly beat it with that. So big spinner bait's number one. Second with that is a full-size jig with a large trailer on it. Like my Blaukat Throwback jig, full-size 1/2 ounce jig, big trailer, like either a big pork frog or like a big super chunk or something like that. A bait that's 5 or 6 inches big. A big crawdad looking full-size jig is a great big fish lure, especially the darker you go. One of the things you'll find out about catching big fish on a jig is most of your big fish on a jig are going to come on your blacks, your black and blues, your black and chartreuses. You can catch big ones on green pumpkins and browns and that type of stuff also, but the big fish really, really like a black jig, especially a black and blue jig. So that's one thing to remember. You may not get as many bites on it as you do like a green one, but you'll catch bigger fish for sure. Out of all the big fish that I've caught on jigs, by far, probably 80% of them have come on a black and blue jig. So that's another important thing to remember. The other, besides a spinnerbait and a jig, they're very random. I'll just sort of give you some honorable mentions because the spinnerbait and the jig are the best 1-2 punch by far to consistently catch big ones. Other ways you can catch big ones is on a big crankbait, like a big, Strike King 6XD, Megabass Deep X, DD22, something like that. Big deep diving crankbait is a great big fish lure. I've caught a lot of big ones on that. Big square bill crankbait also. Big 3-inch square bill crankbait, fished in shallow water. Another good bait to catch big ones on. Bigger swim baits and glide baits like we talked about. Those are more low percentage baits. So you can catch big ones on them, but you don't get hardly any bites on it. When you go to a big swim bait or a big glide bait, like a 7 or 8 inch model, the number of bites that you're going to get just drop off a cliff as far as the numbers. So that's why I like to stay with the realistic lures that we're talking about, like the spinner baits and the jigs and the crankbaits. Another big fish lure is a chatterbait. Full-size chatterbait with a big trailer on it. Great bait for big fish. And then finally, Alabama rig. Alabama rig will catch big ones. It's sort of one of those deals. A lot of people don't like to fish it. I don't like to fish it, but it will catch big ones. And then one more honorable mention is topwater lure. Topwater lure like a buzzer or walking topwater, something like that, will get you a big one occasionally too. But, you can't beat the spinnerbait and the jig for catching big fish. Okay, the next thing is where you throw it. If you're going to catch big ones, you got to throw it where the big ones live. There's 2 elements to catching big fish that you have to remember. Number one is you got to have proximity to deep water. Now I'm talking about consistently catching them. You can always catch one up shallow on a Ned rig or something. In fact, I've seen some big ones caught like that. But if you're going to consistently, day in and day out, year after year, catch them, it's going to be, proximity to deeper water in correlation with having some type of cover diversity. Cover diversity in terms of different type of structure and cover for the bass, extremely critical for those population of fish that live shallower. Not so for the off-water roamers. You can throw all that out the window. There is a population of bass guys that live in open water most all year long. You can't relate them to anything. They're their own thing. They're rogues out there, swim around. They live around shad schools in open water. Who cares about that? I want to be able to throw to a target to catch a big one. So you got to have a diversity of cover. Number one big bass cover is grass. any type of aquatic, emergent, or submergent vegetation is the #1 big bass habitat by far. Hydrilla, milfoil, cattails, reeds, lily pads, anything like that. Big bass love aquatic vegetation. That's why some of the best lakes in the country have a lot of aquatic vegetation in it. So always gravitate towards that. Slow rolling a big spinnerbait, through grass beds. I've caught toads doing that. Submergent hydrilla and milfoil. Flipping a big black and blue jig into cattails and reeds. I've caught toads doing that. So those are two things you just can't, you can't deny how effective they are. But if you're on a lake that does not have grass in it, you've got traditional rock and wood structures, this is where that proximity to deeper water really pays off. Doesn't matter what your structure is. The structure can be secondary to that, but you have to be close to deep water. That's why a creek channel or a river channel in fairly close proximity to your cover is important. So in other words, what I'm talking about is like fishing a channel bank that has a laydown tree on it, or fishing a boat dock, a stretch of boat docks that has some deep water next to the docks, like the river channel or the creek channel swings up against those docks. Another really good place to catch big ones at. Sometimes you can catch them just fishing down rock and rock transition. That's very seasonal with that, but most of the time you got to have some type of a ambush point for the fish, which is usually rock or wood cover in the form of rocks or laydown trees or logs or boat docks positioned around that deeper cover. That's the areas that you're gonna catch the big ones in. And obviously, timing is real critical on that. Most of your big fish are gonna get caught at night because they feed at night, but there's a window for catching big fish that I have found, sort of that 10 o'clock in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. During that midday part is when you do catch most of your big ones. I haven't caught very many big fish early and late in the day, but I have caught a lot of them at night, and I've caught them during the mid part of that day. It just seems like those big ones, I guess light intensity is more during the day or whatever, but that's when I've caught a lot of big fish with that. Finally, guys, one of the things I want to stress with you, if you're going to catch big ones, you have got to be quiet. Big fish are smart, and you can't just like slop up on them. You can't get your boat too close to them. You can't make a lot of in the water or loud in the boat movements that are, jostling tackle boxes and rods around. You got to be quiet, and you got to be stealthy, and you got to make longer casts. You're very seldom going to catch a big fish unless you're flipping and pitching very heavy cover up close. Most of the big fish you catch are going to come out there a ways because they're spooky. So when you're approaching cover, try to come up to it slow and methodical and quiet and make a long cast. All that stuff works in correlation together to help you catch some more big ones. So anyway, that's just some good foundational tips, guys. We could dig into each one of those a lot more, but that's some of the stuff that's helped me out a lot, and hope it helps you guys too. And we'll talk later.